Okay, so we're going to go back to one step forward, two steps back, the crisis in our party. This is Section 8, the preparations for the Congress. So, this is in 1904. Let's keep that in mind. The preparations for the Congress. There is a saying that everyone is entitled to curse his judges for 24 hours. Our party Congress, like any Congress of any party, was also the judge of certain persons who laid claim to the position of leaders, but who met with discomfiture. Today, these representatives of the minority are, with a naivete verging on the pathetic, quote, cursing their judges and doing their best to discredit the Congress, to belittle its importance and authority. This striving has been expressed most vividly, perhaps in an article in Iskra, number 57 by, quote, practical worker, who feels outraged at the idea of the Congress being a sovereign divinity. This is so characteristic a trait of the new Iskra that it cannot be passed over in silence. The editors, the majority of whom were rejected by the Congress, continue on the one hand to call themselves a party editorial board, while on the other they accept with open arms people who declare that the Congress was not divine. Charming, is it not? To be sure, gentlemen, the Congress was not divine. But what must we think of people who began to, quote, blackguard the Congress after they have met with defeat at it? For indeed, let us recall the main facts in the history of the preparations for the Congress. Iskra declared at the very outset in its announcement of publication in 1900 that before we could unite, lines of demarcation must be drawn. Iskra endeavored to make the conference of 1902 a private meeting and not a party Congress. Iskra acted with extreme caution in the summer and autumn of 1902 when it reestablished the organizing committee elected at that conference. At last, the work of demarcation was finished, as we all acknowledged. The organizing committee was constituted at the very end of 1902. Iskra welcomed its firm establishment and in an editorial article in its 32nd issue declared that the convocation of a party Congress was a most urgent, pressing necessity. Thus, the last thing we can be accused of is having been hasty and convenient to second Congress. We were in fact guided by the maxim, measure your cloth 7 times right before you cut it. And we had every moral right to expect that after the cloth had been cut, our comrades would not start complaining and measuring it all over again. The organizing committee drew up very precise, formalistic, and bureaucratic, those would say who are now using these words to cover up their political spinelessness. He says, that the spineless are calling it formalistic and bureaucratic. Regulations for the Second Congress. Got them passed by all the committees, and finally endorsed them, stipulating, among other things, in point 18 that, quote, all decisions of the Congress and all the elections it carries out are decisions of the party and binding on all party organizations. They cannot be challenged by anyone on any pretext whatever, and can be rescinded or amended only by the next party Congress. How innocent in themselves are they not? Are these words accepted at the time, without a murmur, as something axiomatic? Yet how strange they sound today, like a verdict against the, quote, minority. Why was this point included? Merely as a formality? Of course not. This provision seemed necessary, and was indeed necessary, because the party consisted of a number of isolated and independent groups which might refuse to recognize the Congress. This provision, in fact, expressed the free will of all the revolutionaries, which is now being talked about so much and so irrelevantly, the term, quote, free being euphemistically applied to what really deserves the epithet capricious. It was equivalent to the word of honor, mutually pledged by all the Russian Social Democrats. It was intended to guarantee that all the tremendous effort, danger, and expense entailed by the Congress should not be in vain, that the Congress should not be turned into a farce. It, in advance, qualified any refusal to recognize the decisions and elections at the Congress as a breach of faith. Who is it then that the new Iskra is scoffing at when it makes the new discovery that the Congress was not divine and its decisions are not sacrosanct? Does that discovery imply, quote, new views on organization, end quote, or only new attempts to cover up old tracks? Okay, so that is one step forward, two steps back. That was A, the preparations for the Congress. This is next is going to be B, significance of the various groupings at the Congress. Yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. Mark us off Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Tumblr, YouTube, Medium. Follow me on all those, and y'all have a great day. Dodada Goy.